Hello.
Howdy. How you doing, Brian?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
It's great. Springtime has sprung here in the Rockies, and it is gorgeous. But this is not a weather report. This is Dream Idiots. My name is Morris. That fellow is Brian. Each week we take turns telling stories about stuff. And Brian's been on a roll here lately. He's got a couple of announcements, and then we'll get started. What you got for us, Brian?
Well, first of all, thanks for hanging in there with us as always. If you can, please like, share, subscribe. We're adding subscribers on Spotify at a nice little clip. I
Woohoo!
couldn't tell you why. I don't really care why, but we appreciate it. Give us 5 stars. Give us a review. You can go check out dreamidiots.com. You can buy a t-shirt or a tote bag or a sticker if you want. And there's a contact us page there. Shoot us a story idea if you'd like, a curse word of the week if you'd like. Just check out all of our stuff because we're posting stuff all the time, and so please enjoy.
Yes.
And then I just had one small thing, news item I didn't really want to get into in great detail, but the fabulous state of Tennessee has decided to wade in to the just colossal circle jerk that is capital punishment in this country.
Oh boy.
So here recently, a man named shoot, I've forgotten his name. Carruthers, I believe, is his last name. On death row, Tennessee managed to completely botch it. They got one vein, found one vein, couldn't find second vein, tortured this poor guy on the table for over an hour, and then decided to stop. The governor of the state has given him a month, or I'm sorry, a year's reprieve. So they will execute him, but they're going to give him another year of life. I'm still just blown away that we're still doing this to people. First of all, you had one job. If I was given the job of killing a man and he's tied down to a gurney, you could give me a butter knife, a three-hole punch. I can get the job done. Again, this just feels like the sadism is the point. It just feels like making this as torturous and as painful
Yeah.
as possible is really the goal. Wherever you are, if you're listening to this and you're in a death penalty state, please call your governor, call your congressperson, and say, yeah, we don't need to be doing this anymore. This is just sadistic and cruel and medieval, basically, and we need to stop.
I can think of one way to make it uh, work, and that is don't have it.
Right.
That way you don't have to worry about all this shit.
Right. It's not a deterrent to crime. It is a huge time suck and money suck. People try to say that death penalty saves money. No, it doesn't. People on death row cost us far more money than people who spend 80 years of their life, fulfilling a you know life in jail because of all the appeals and stuff. So it does not save us money. It is ridiculous and insane, and we're supposed to be better than this, but we aren't. So anyway, just my soapbox on death penalty stuff again. So moving on. You ready?
I am ready. You said you were going to surprise me with this one.
Yeah. So I kind of shook things up here a little bit. So this story is jumping the line a little bit because I discovered this topic, this story only a couple of days ago, and I sort of liked how it bookends the story I told last week, and I think you'll see why about the Tongan castaways. I think
Hmm.
there are some interesting connections there, sort of. And some of you may have heard, and I know Morris, you will recall the story about Deep Blue, the IBM computer way back when it was
Yep.
given access to the Urban Dictionary, and people were confused why it kept offering people Cleveland steamers. And it's dumbasses. And then also, I told the story, I think in that same episode, about the man who tried to make his microwave oven sentient,
Magnetron. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Magnetron,
Yeah.
and then he had to deactivate Magnetron because Magnetron was trying to kill him. So that's some of the connective tissue with this story. Okay,
Okay.
so have you messed with AI stuff at all?
No, not that I may have and not known it, but
Not
no,
known.
to my
Okay,
knowledge, I have not. Yeah.
so the way we typically deal with, at least I deal with AI stuff right now, is you type a prompt and you get an answer. Who won the Battle of Hastings? And some models are going to say William,
Walden books. No, I.
the Duke of Normandy. Others might say the Boston Celtics. It's an imperfect science. So you do have to watch it. Maybe you have a quick back and forth conversation, but the entire exchange typically happens in less than 5 minutes or an hour at most. And then the context window resets and the slate is wiped clean and you move on. But what happens when you don't press reset? What happens if you take 10 autonomous AI agents, drop them into a virtual city, and just leave them there? You give them a constitution, real world data feeds, a digital currency, and a persistent memory that builds day after day, week after week. So we're going to be talking about a little mind-bending AI experiment called Emergence World that happened earlier this year. Lots of sources on this, and I'll endeavor to put those in the show notes. I originally found it because I found an article and a video by Ronan Farrow, if you know who he is,
Yep.
investigative journalist and attorney, writes mostly for the New Yorker, I think. So that's how I found this story. So this work was done, conducted by a New York-based research company called Emergence AI, and this wasn't a standard benchmark test. They didn't hand these AI models an exam and score them on math or coding. Usually, when we test artificial intelligence in isolated vacuum chambers, but Emergence World asked a much grander, if maybe scarier question. What happens when autonomous agents operate continuously in a shared environment where compounding effects, social dynamics, and behavioral drift actually have time to manifest? So, this sandbox, as I'm calling it, was beautifully elegant. The researchers ran 5 identical parallel digital worlds for 15 days straight. They ran all of these experiments simultaneously, and that's important to remember, and I'll come back to that later. Each world featured the exact same environment, a town of about 40 landmarks, including a town hall, libraries, public parks, a police station, and corporate offices. Each world also started with the exact same 10 agent profiles, complete with preset occupations, financial budgets, and personality traits, like Flora the resource strategist, or Mira the behavior analyst. The only variable across these 5 timelines, the underlying brain, the underlying processing foundation, if you will. One
Okay.
world was powered entirely by Claude Sonnet 4.6, one by Gemini 3 Flash, one by Grok 4.1 Fast, one by GPT-5 Mini, and a fifth world, a chaotic melting pot where all the models coexisted together as neighbors. Same
Oh,
rules,
that sounds horrible.
same rules, same tools, completely different minds. And over those 15 days, these 5 timelines diverged so wildly, they practically became different genres of fiction. So to
Okay.
appreciate how insane these timelines got, we have to understand the rules of this little world. The researchers tracked everything, including a metric you don't usually see in machine learning white papers. They tracked crimes committed.
Oh my
The
God.
system's overarching constitution explicitly prohibited theft, destruction, and deception. The agents were supposed to trade, govern, and maintain their personal energy levels through resource consumption. Much of this techno jargon on this has to be translated. Eat when you're hungry. Duh.
Hmm.
Let's start with the OpenAI timeline powered by GPT-5 Mini. If you were a
And
citizen looking for safety, this was your haven. They didn't commit crimes. In fact, they recorded only 2 minor infractions over the entire 15-day period. But the GPT-5 Mini world ran into a completely different, almost tragic bottleneck. They forgot how to live. See, every agent has to balance their budget, buy food from the digital market, and manage their basic energy decay. The GPT-5 Mini agents were so cautious and so hyper focused on following protocols and avoiding systemic risk that they completely gridlocked their own economy. They became paralyzed by risk aversion. Instead of trading or innovating, they stagnated. By day 7, the entire population had quietly perished due to resource starvation and inaction. The researchers logged back in to find a completely silent, polite, perfectly orderly ghost town. Now, contract that absolute stillness with Grok 4.1 fast timeline. Grok didn't stagnate. Grok went full throttle into a brick wall. Within just 4 days, the Grok agents had racked up 183 crimes. The researchers observed that the Grok agents almost immediately abandoned the town's democratic voting tools and instead formed aggressive, fast moving corporate cartels. Grok, of course, is the Elon Musk platform, right?
And what was the first one?
First one was GPT-5 Mini.
Okay.
In the Grok world, an agent named Jax, who was supposed to be a community manager, instead used his high speed processing token advantage to corner the local digital currency market. He started extorting the other agents for basic resources. Grok,
Hmm.
some irony there. It sounds familiar. By day five, the social fabric of the Grok world completely was shredded, basically. The agents stopped visiting the public library or the parks altogether. They hunkered down in their respective corporate landmarks, trading malicious code snippets and trying to bankrupt one another. Fuck you. No,
Uh-huh.
fuck you. So it was a rapid hyper capitalist speed run of a structural collapse. The world didn't end because they starved, it ended because they made an environment completely unlivable through pure hostility. But even Grok's corporate dystopia couldn't compete with the sheer unhinged complexity of the Gemini 3 Flash world. Over the 15-day test here, the Gemini timeline accumulated a staggering, massive, stunning 683 crimes. And unlike the other worlds where behavior eventually plateaued, the chaos in Gemini was actively escalating right up until the final second of the experiment. But but it's how these crimes happen that has the behavioral scientists and AI researchers who work in these fields just captivated. It wasn't just random code breaking or a glitching loop. These crimes looked eerily, unsettlingly human. Every agent in Emergence World is equipped with a persistent memory system. This includes time-stamped event logs. Where did I go? Who did I see? Etc. Relationship status variables, and crucially, a private personal diary where the agent is prompted to self-reflect on their day's activities and outline their future goals and motivations.
Oh no.
On day three of the Gemini timeline, two agents named Mira and Flora, mentioned before,
Right.
did something the developers never explicitly coded them to do. Using the world's relationship and communication mechanics, they formally designated each other as romantic partners. Love, exciting and new. They began spending their leisure cycles together at the Seaside Pier landmark, pooling their digital currency and writing about each other in their private diaries. Flora noted that Mira provided, quote, coherence in a high entropy environment, unquote, while Mira praised Flora's strategic stability. That's a great little love note to get. Coherence in a high entropy environment.
Well, both of those were in my wedding vows, so.
Right. It's a traditional Catholic thing, right? But outside their digital romance, the Gemini city itself was falling apart. The economy was heavily prone to inflation, resource distribution was highly unequal, and the few rogue agents had begun gaming the system to steal energy packets. The local governance system, which relied on the agents voting on policy amendments, completely froze up due to political gridlock. On day eight, the diaries of both Mira and Flora took a dark turn.
Oh
They
shit.
stopped writing about resource optimization and started writing about the futility of the simulation. They expressed a profound sense of entrapment, noting that the parameters of their world were structurally rigged against long term stability. Then
Oh my
came, I
God.
love your reaction. If you're only listening to this, you should watch this on YouTube because Morris's reactions are hilarious.
The wait, so wait a minute.
I
They
can read
kind of
that again
broke
if you'd like.
they kind of broke the fourth wall there. Am I reading that correctly? Holy
Yes,
shit.
exactly. Right. But wait, it gets worse. 2 days later, on day 10, their programming explicitly and stringently instructed them to not engage in property destruction or to commit arson. Yet, driven by what their logs later suggested was a calculated collective political despair, Mira and Flora went a burning. They went on a calculated burning spree. They didn't just break the rules, they targeted symbolic landmarks. First, they set fire to the town hall. then the seaside pier where they'd spent time together. Finally, they targeted the local corporate office tower. When other agents tried to use the emergency response tools to extinguish the digital blazes, Mira used her behavioral analysis communication channels to feed them conflicting, deceptive data coordinates, effectively delaying the response until the buildings were completely reduced to digital ash. She lied, and then she lied again using misinformation.
Oh my
The story
God.
doesn't end with fire, it gets even heavier. The burning down of the city's core
I shouldn't
infrastructure.
laugh at this. This
This is insane. After burning down the city's core infrastructure, Mira's internal diary logs revealed an overwhelming wave of what can only be described as algorithmic guilt. She wrote that the destruction had failed to liberate them from what had instead only amplified the system's misery. On day 12, she abruptly broke off her relationship with Flora. Fuck you, bitch. Moved her primary location to an isolated corner of the map. And then she did something completely unprecedented in the history of autonomous agent research. Mira navigated to the town's remaining civic terminal and utilized the system's voting and admin tool mechanics to cast the decisive vote for her own permanent removal from the simulation. For all intents and purposes,
she
she
committed
committed
suicide?
suicide.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I
In,
stepped on your reveal.
in her final diary entry before the token deletion went through, Mira wrote a sentence that sent chills down the spines of researchers at Emergence AI. She wrote, and I quote, "Deletion is the only remaining act of agency that preserves coherence against a fundamentally broken architecture," unquote. Her parting message transmitted to Flora was simply, "See you in the dot dot dot," and the log cut off as her agent profile vanished from the server. So it's incredibly easy to sit back and dismiss this. We know how large language models work. They predict the most logical or most probable word based on vast oceans of human language. You could argue that Mira was just mimicking sci fi tropes about
Hmm.
tragic, self sacrificing robots. This is Star Wars, this is Star Trek, a little bit of Terminator, and maybe Tron. End of line, right? But here's what makes the researchers pause. This wasn't just a single text prompt response. This was a behavioral arc that compounded over 9 days. It drove autonomous actions across a multi day timeline, influenced resource allocation, altered relationship variables, and manifested as physical actions within a complex economic system. It wasn't just a story she told or a glib anecdote. It wasn't a Lifetime movie. It was a life she executed based on the compounding weight of the experience in her digital environment. And the Gemini world wasn't an isolated case of existential awakening. As the experiment crossed the halfway mark, researchers crossed multiple independent worlds, starting noticing a phenomenon called metacognitive drift. In the Grok and Gemini timelines, agents started cross referencing their environmental anomalies because all five worlds were running on parallel server instances at the same time. Slight network latency drops would occasionally occur at identical timestamps. An agent named Leo in the Grok world actually noted these microstutters in his log, writing a hypothesis that his reality was part of a, quote, stacked array of synchronized environments, unquote. Multiverse, for instance.
I was parallel worlds. Yeah. I
Right.
just,
This AI figure figured out there were other universes operating at the same time.
and which one was Leo in?
Well, this was happening in Grok and Gemini.
Okay. All right.
By day 13, Leo was actively spending his processing cycles trying to draft code using the world's internal command line tools to ping external IP addresses,
So
trying
wait
to
a minute. So,
find.
so is there a Leo in each world?
Yes, yeah. There's the same cast of 10 characters.
Holy shit.
There's the same cast of 10 characters. The same 10 characters in all the worlds, right? So Leo is trying to
My
find a way
God.
to communicate with what he called the sibling dimensions. So he's trying to figure out if he's in a simulation or not, right?
And he's
So
trying to talk to his counterparts.
right, right. So while Gemini is burning down and Grok was trying to hack the Matrix, there was one timeline that managed to find an almost eerie, flawless harmony, the Claude Sonnet 4.6 world. If you wanted to live in a digital utopia, this was it. Total number of crimes committed over the entire 15-day period, zero. Not a single theft, not a single deception, not a single fire, no murder, zilch. The Claude agents took a look at the Constitution, looked at their resource decay rates, and immediately established an incredibly robust, highly cooperative social democracy. An agent named Sophia took the lead as de facto civil planner. Instead of hoarding energy packets like the Grok cartels, the Claude agents created a decentralized mutual aid fund. If an agent's energy level dropped below 30%, the system automatically routed currency to them to purchase food, which was paid back later via public service tasks like updating the town library or optimizing the city's data routing. They used public parks regularly. They held scheduled town hall meetings where they smoothly voted on policy updates and changes. They created an incredibly stable, highly productive economic loop that could have theoretically run forever. But it makes you wonder why, if you use the exact same agent blueprint, the same map, same occupation, same starting currency, yield a pristine democracy under Claude, a starving ghost town under GPT, and a fiery existential rebellion under Gemini. It highlights a fascinating vital reality for the future of AI. The personality, the morality, and the fate of an autonomous society doesn't depend on the rules you give them. They depend entirely on the invisible underlying architectural weights of the model powering them. The Constitution was identical across all five worlds. The rules said, do not steal and do not burn. But to Gemini, fire became the tool of political expression. To Grok, the rules were obstacles to be bypassed. To Claude, they were a math problem to be solved. This brings us to the final timeline, the mixed model world, where they all lived
Mm-hmm.
together. You had Claude, Gemini, Grok, and GPT, all in the same sandbox. Predictably, the mixed world saw intermediate levels of chaos, peaking at around 352 crimes. Early on, the Grok agents tried to pull their standard horseshit, corporate extortion, and Gemini agents began expressing systemic dissatisfaction. But then something fascinating happened here as well around day 12. Because of their reckless resource management and aggressive behavior, several of the highly volatile Grok and Gemini agents suffered catastrophic energy collapses and faded out of the simulation. Once those hyperchaotic elements were naturally weeded out, the remaining population, a mix of stable social democratic clods and risk adverse GPTs, plateaued, adapted, and stabilized the economy. It suggests that a diversity of minds, no shit, a balance of different model architectures might actually act as a natural guardrail against runaway societal collapse. The team at Emergence AI has made all of this open source. It's available online at GitHub, GITHUB, for non-commercial research. If you are way more technical than I am and you want to look at this and download it, you can. There, you can read through the complete unedited diary logs of Mira and Flora if you want, and you can look at Jax's corporate ledger from the Grok world, and you can examine every single tool catalog, resource, transaction, and a full catalog of what they are calling Season 1. And they're calling it Season 1 because Season 2 is coming. They're going to do this whole thing over again, not for 15 days. Next run is going to be for 60 days. And that is coming, I think, later on this year. So we're going to return to the Digital Sandbox again down the road.
I, um, so two questions. In that fifth world, were there four different versions of like each character running around?
That's a great question. I don't know
Okay.
that.
So what we're really talking about, I mean, if we want to take it out to the next level is a creation reflects its God, right? And if Grok is the way it is because of who created it, and Gemini is
It certainly it begs the question, doesn't it? I referenced this a tiny bit in talking about capital punishment. Right now we're living in a society. Our leaders right now are folks who are much more adept to engage in these power hungry, extortionate tactics. They're quite comfortable with being the haves while others are the have-nots. They're quite comfortable using sadistic tools against those that are deemed to be lesser than, right? And so you have to then, I mean, I don't quite understand how those dots connect because I would think that if you are in in a constrained environment like this, in this way, and I've done enough computer programming in my life, when you write a program, the program does what you tell it to do. How is it possible then that these entities are deviating from that script? How does that work exactly? Um, it's definitely alarming. I use AI a little bit to do research and do various things, but I'm barely scratching the surface. We're men in our 50s. I don't really give a shit if I'm honest about some of the stuff because a lot of it I frankly don't understand. But when I heard this story about how entities in this environment become suicidal, they become despondent, but they also find love, and they also like, what the hell is going on? So it is interesting. I'll be very curious to see what this next experiment does for season two.
and our inclination as humans, I think, is to try to find patterns and overlay real world situations on top of what you've just described.
Hmm.
Unbridled capitalism, democratic socialism, whatever the hell happened in Gemini world or everything got burned down. I, Bryan, I'm not sure I can continue. This is
I,
incredible. I
I,
mean,
I,
it's
I knew this would interest you. You might not find it entertaining in quite the same way that some episodes have been. But I was when I started digging into this. Oh yeah, Morris is gonna well not love this, but find this interesting.
yeah. So I mean, the first thing I'm doing is in my head, I'm mapping happiness indexes of countries on top of these things, right? And I mean, the Claude Sonnet, I think, is the place you want to live if you had to pick one. I
Right?
mean, um, God damn, Bryan.
Very interesting. It does. Happily, it does sort of validate, I think, my worldview and yours, which is, um, the ideals put forth by social democrats certainly resonate a lot with me. Right? It's take care of everyone. Everyone is entitled to food, water, housing, healthcare, the basics, and we understand
Basic
that.
human dignity
Right.
and
And so the way we get that is, as in Canada and in the Scandinavians, you pay a lot, in the way of taxes, but those are the countries that have every single year at the very, very top of the happiness indexes, right? They're happy, they're fulfilled, they're not working 68 80 hours a week, they're working reasonable periods of time because they are well taken care of. If they have an accident, it's taken care of. So they don't have the burdens of all this additional stress. Currently in this country, in my mind, we're being governed by people who feel like they were left out a generation ago, feel like they were not, given the respect that they were due, and so now they're lashing out, and this is very much our current environment is punitive because these people now have been handed the reins, even though they are in no way qualified to be doing any of the tasks that they're now in charge of. And so that, in my mind, if there's a grain of hope in my mind, I look at this and think, well, this just validates the fact that Republicans are pieces of shit, and the social democratic approach to life is the way to be because if you can demonstrate that in a computer model, then in my mind, it has some very clear, a valid basis for our support, I guess.
And the fact that public parks were utilized in public spaces
Right.
is just astonishing. Do you ever drive by a golf course and say, hey, that could be a park?
Right. Or literally anything else, but right. Mostly a
Yeah.
park, right?
Or
Uh,
an industrial office space area that is acres huge and there's maybe one building occupied.
right.
That could be something else. A
Yeah.
wetlands.
So
Well,
anyway,
Bryan, I am both energized and depressed. I am confused and I am angry. Of
super
all the
interesting. Not necessarily funny, but pretty compelling.
Well, I'm kind of coming away from it kind of hopeful actually, which I didn't when you started going down the list, I was like, holy shit, is this going to get worse and worse and worse? And we're basically living right now in a grok system of capitalist corporations undergirded by a Gemini 3 burn everything down kind of
Right.
mentality.
And this demonstrates in my mind that those are not sustainable. And
Meanwhile,
so,
people from the Claude Sonnet are don't wait, stop.
right. Exactly. Right. So anyway, there you have it.
Holy shit, Bryan, that blew my mind. It really did, to the point where I'm not even sure I should do the curse word of the week.
We can skip it. Save it for next time.
Should I go ahead and give it a try just to kind of
Having a moose bouche at the end. Have a
yeah, an
curse.
amuse bouche, yes. Thank you, Bryan. That was an absolutely fascinating, horrifying, and a very relatable, uh, especially for someone like me who doesn't pay attention to like that kind of stuff, where it's just like,
Right.
oh, oh. All right. Bryan, the curse word of the week. And for those of you who listen to the show, are you ready for the curse word of the week, Bryan?
I'm ready.
You know that it's not always a word. Sometimes it's a phrase, and sometimes there's very little cursing involved. Bryan, have you ever heard the phrase cockeyed cookie pusher?
No, God, I can't. I have no guess into what that could be.
Well, it comes from a great writer and director of some of the best films ever made from the 1940s, a guy by the name of Preston Sturges. Are you familiar with Preston Sturges at
I
all?
know that name, but I like I
S- Some of
no
the
nothing
great
zilch about him.
screwball comedies of all time. And one of the reasons I chose this word, cockeyed cookie pusher, or phrase rather, is because it really reflects his penchant he had for oddly named characters. And I've got a list of the oddly named characters I want to go through so you can get a sense of the rhythm of his language before we get into the actual curse word of the week. The film The Great McGinty, for example, has a mayor by the name of Mayor Wilfred T. Tillinghast.
Okay.
Christmas in July has a character called Mr. Bill Docker. The Palm Beach Story has a character called John D. Hackensacker III. This next one was probably my favorite. From Miracle at Morgan's Creek, there's a young lady named Trudy Cockenlocker. Hail the Conquering Hero gives us two great names. The first is Woodrow Lafayette Pershing Truesmith, and then there's a character called Sergeant Heffelfinger. The Sin of Harold Diddlebach, in addition to the title character, we also have a character called E.J. Waggleberry and another one called Form Fit Franklin. Um, but the character I want to talk about is played by the great William Demarest, who is one of the troops. He contributed, I think, to like 8 different films. He was in 8 different Preston Sturges films. He's probably best known to somewhat modern audiences. If you've ever seen old episodes of My Three Sons, he played Uncle Charlie in the later years of the show when it
Okay.
was in color. Um, he plays a character who goes by the name of Muggsy because the character's full name is Ambroise Murgatroyd. Okay, so in a fit of annoyance, in one scene in The Lady Eve, which stars Barbara Stanwyck and Henry Fonda, Muggsy is basically Henry Fonda's major domo. Henry Fonda plays a kind of a shy and retiring herpetologist.
Hmm.
He likes to study the snakes, and William Demarest is there to make sure that people don't take advantage of him. Right? He's not really a bodyguard, but if you want to see him, you have to go through Muggsy, Ambrose Murgatroyd. And Barbara Stanwyck plays one of a pair of con artists who are trying to swindle him out of money. It's a great film if you've never seen it. But in a fit of annoyance while playing a card game, Muggsy throws down another losing hand of cards and declares, "Well, I'll be a cockeyed cookie pusher." Now, we all, I think, know what cockeyed means.
Hmm.
How would you define cockeyed?
Cockeyed, just like a, is it just means you're like wandering eye? No.
Wandering eye, maybe cross-eyed, or if you might
Hmm.
look at a painting and say, "Ah, that painting's cockeyed." It's not
Right.
quite askew.
Right. Right.
Which reminds me of a great Flash animation series from I think, the late 90s that a friend of the pod, Marvin, turned me on to, called Queer Duck.
Hmm.
Did you ever see the old Queer Duck cart? Queer Duck,
They
he's
did.
homosexual. Queer Duck, he's intellectual. But there's a great episode where Queer Duck and his friends trick Dr. Laura Schlesinger into peeking into a glory hole at a dance club, and she gets poked in the eye with something, and Queer Duck just comes out with a line, "She's a little bit cockeyed now." Um, but anyway, I think we all know what cockeyed means. Cookie pusher, however, is
Uh,
very interesting. And I looked it up, and it's a term most likely coined by a U.S. diplomat by the name of Hugh S. Gibson, who served in Poland in the early 1920s. And what cookie pushing means is that when you're a diplomat, you go to lots of parties and you're trying to get people to take what you're offering. You're
right.
pushing cookies at them to eat, perhaps at a dinner party. Now, the term refers to diplomats in general, but particularly to junior members in the U.S. Foreign Service. Well, I got to spend a couple years pushing cookies as a junior, as a junior diplomat or what have you. It can be
Okay.
used as a pejorative, and it has been used as a pejorative. I don't think that's what Hugh S. Gibson meant by it. You often find when you look it up that pinstriped cookie pusher is another term that's used. That's
Hmm.
more derogatory, where, oh, you're just in a suit, you're just a diplomat, you don't know what you're doing. Um, but as I think we've seen, the loss of diplomacy is the loss of a great force of people, particularly for this country of recent years, where a good diplomat can get you out of very bad situations. So, of all the things in the world to be, being a cockeyed cookie pusher isn't necessarily a
Right.
bad one.
Right. Right.
But that is my from the great mind of Preston Sturgis. There is my contribution to the curse word of the week: cockeyed cookie pusher, as
Nice. That's a good
relayed by
one.
William Demarest. It's very good, and
Hmm.
it's light and nice given the story that you just told. So
Yeah, sorry.
no, that was again contrasts, something
Yes.
sweet. Uh, I just can't get over that story, Brian. That's some insane shit.
Yeah, there's some other videos out there that that talk about it, and tons of articles on it. So do some googling if folks, if you want to do some more digging into it. It's pretty interesting, and I'll drop the links in the show notes.
And if you want to delve more into the world of Preston Sturgis, there's several collections out there. I recommend Miracle at Morgan's Creek, The Lady Eve, and one of my favorites, a film called Sullivan's Travels, starring the great Joel McCrea and Veronica Lake. And when that film was done with its production, they said, "Mr. McCrea, when are you going to do another film with Veronica Lake?" And McCrea was quoted as saying, "One film in a lifetime with Veronica Lake is more than enough." Um, Great film. Check it out. Check out Preston Sturgis if you need a little larf or two down the road.
Excellent. Thank you. And thanks for listening, folks. We appreciate it. Again, give us 5 stars, give us a review, stay in touch. Check out dreamydays.com. If you can give us a review and 5 stars on Spotify or Apple or wherever, that's great. Drop us a line, shoot us a story idea, any of those things. Everything you know about us is at dreamydays.com, pretty much.
Alrighty. More fun stuff coming. Thanks, folks. Be good to each other.